In our experience consulting with clients, we've never come across anyone that fully understood how to charge for their equipment and whether they should be charging for it directly in every bid or to put it in overhead. The good news is our software simplifies this process. In fact, we use the same system the rental yards use to get their pricing, and all you have to do is answer a few simple questions about your equipment. Before we get started, let's talk about where to place your equipment in the software. There are no right or wrong answers here. You have the choice of putting your equipment in the overhead equipment section or in the large equipment section. Any equipment placed in the overhead equipment section gets recovered or paid for through your hourly rate, which we will come up with later. This means you never have to worry about charging for that equipment in a proposal. All equipment placed in the large equipment section only gets paid for or recovered when you add it to each individual proposal. The idea then is to find the balance between what goes in each of these sections. A good rule of thumb to find that balance is any piece of equipment up to $3,000 should go in the overhead equipment section. This would include equipment such as concrete saws, plate compactors, and lasers. This ensures that you will recover the cost of the equipment without having to worry about adding it to every bid, which would be incredibly tedious. Any large equipment over $3,000 that's used in your business but not specifically used to build a project should also go in your overhead equipment. A good example of this kind of equipment would be job site trucks that take crews to and from the projects, job site trailers, management vehicles, and equipment trailers. Any large equipment over $3,000 that's used to build any project awarded from a proposal should go into the large equipment section and will need to be added to each proposal. Examples of this type of equipment would be skid steers, mini skid steers, excavators, material haulers, dump trucks, and dump trailers, if the dump trailer is being used to deliver or haul material away. That should be enough information to get all of your equipment organized in the correct sections. Now, there's one more thing we need to do before we start adding your equipment, and that is to set your fuel prices. Click on the Fuel Prices button at the top right-hand side of the screen. Double-click on the Off-Road Diesel space and enter the amount you pay. Do the same thing for diesel and finally unleaded. And don't forget to hit the Save button. It's a good practice to update these anytime you see a fluctuation in fuel prices. All right, let's start adding your equipment. We will start with the large equipment section. Remember, any equipment you place here will have to be added to each proposal to recover the cost of that equipment. Go ahead and click on the Add Equipment icon. In the first space, you'll simply type in the name of the equipment you want to add. You will always want to give each piece of equipment a unique name so you can tell the difference between them in the equipment list. In this instance, we'll call it Bobcat Skid Steer. The next space is your subcategory, which is used to categorize each type of equipment you own. Since it's a Bobcat skid steer, the subcategory will be skid steer. The reason we have you subcategorize your equipment is because after you add all of a specific type of equipment, in this case skid steers, the software will give you an average hourly and daily price to charge for all the skid steers in your fleet. This way you don't have to worry about adding each individual skid steer to a bid. You'll just have to add a skid steer. That being said, if you have mini skid steers, medium or large skid steers that all serve different roles, you'll need to make subcategories for each one of those. However, if you own a couple of medium-sized skid steers and one larger skid steer, but you use them interchangeably on your projects, then you can just make one category. In the What is the total cost of equipment section, you will add in the total cost of that piece of equipment, including sales tax. Now, if you purchased a large accessory with that equipment, like a rock rake, you'll want to separate that out and put that rock rake in a different subcategory so you can charge for that whenever you use it. We will put down $70,000 for this piece of machinery. In the next section, you'll just want to click on what kind of fuel that piece of equipment uses. We use off-road diesel in all of our equipment, so we will click on that. In the next space, indicate how many years you expect to own this equipment. You will want to make sure your estimation is conservative. The reason for that is because the number of years you put here is how many years it's going to take to recover the cost of this equipment. I usually use 5 to 7 years on skid steers for two reasons. The first reason is a good skid steer should last 5 to 7 years, and the second reason is this time frame keeps the cost of the equipment reasonable in your bids. You could try to recover the cost of your equipment in 3 years, but that could make your estimates go up in price and artificially push you out of your market. In this instance, we'll go ahead and mark down 7 years. The next space asks for the salvage price. This is the price that you think you can sell that piece of equipment for at the end of the 7 years in today's dollars. We will type in $20,000 here. Once again, you want to be conservative with this number because if you overestimate here, you won't fully recover the cost of your equipment. When filling out the daily fuel consumption, you'll want to put how many gallons of fuel you use on average day, not a full day use. The reason for this is you should be charging for a machine every day it's on the job, regardless of how much you use it. Some days you might only use it for an hour, while other days you might use it for 6 hours. So figure out a good average for your company and put that number here. We usually use around 5 gallons a day. The annual maintenance and repair section is optional and most companies won't use it. The reason is because they don't keep track of what they spend on maintenance for each individual piece of equipment. For this reason, we recommend putting down 0, and we will put all of your maintenance and repair costs in the overhead expenses section when we get to that later on. If you are one of those companies that geeks out about the expenses and you know the exact maintenance and repairs for each machine, then go ahead and add that amount here. If you do add these expenses here, make sure you do not add them in the overhead expenses when you get to that section later on. The next section asks how many days you will use the equipment each year. It's a good idea to be a little bit conservative in your estimation here as well. The reason for being conservative is because the software is going to generate how much to charge per day based on how many days you say you use this machine. If you overestimate and don't hit that number, you won't fully recover the cost of your equipment. For instance, in my company, we work about 200 days a year, and I can assure you that our skid steers are at the job sites all 200 days, but I'm still going to be conservative and put 180 days. This way, I can be sure that I'm going to recover the cost of my machines and maybe a little bit more. The last section asks for the annual percentage rate. If you financed your equipment, we recommend putting the interest rate that you're paying plus 1%. That additional percent will cover for some inflation when you go to replace this machine several years down the road. If you pay cash for this machine, we recommend putting about 7% in the interest rate. The reason for this is you could have invested that money in the stock market where you would have received about 7 to 10% a year. Since you chose to invest that money into your business and this equipment, we feel that it should work for you in the same way as if you invested it in the market. This can also give you a little bit of a buffer in case you have an off year and you don't actually use the machine as much as you estimated. If you don't want to charge interest at all, you're more than welcome to leave it at 0. Once you're done filling in all the spaces, please remember to click the Save button, which will take you back to the main page, and you can add your next piece of machinery. Go ahead and finish adding all the equipment you want in the large equipment section. Again, remember that any equipment you add to this section needs to be included in every proposal you generate that uses this machinery. Once you finish adding all of your equipment, you can toggle the button at the top left-hand side of the screen to see what your daily rate and your hourly rate will be. Remember, all the equipment assigned to the same subcategory will be averaged to one price on your proposals, which you see up above. Once you have finished adding all your large equipment, it's time to start adding your overhead equipment. Click on the Add Equipment button. Remember, everything here is going to be either large equipment that's not directly related to the construction process, such as crew trucks, job site trailers, equipment trailers, and managerial vehicles, or small equipment up to $3,000 that you don't want to have to remember to put on each proposal, like concrete saws, plate compactors, and lasers. This is the same process you used in the large equipment section. The only difference is you don't have to add fuel consumption. We highly recommend adding all of your overhead equipment fuel costs to the overhead expenses section, which will be coming up later. If you keep track of fuel consumption by vehicle, you can add that here. The number of days you will use the equipment is automatically set to 365. Just leave it at that because the software will automatically recover any overhead equipment over the number of months you actually work in a year. One last thing to note in the equipment page. Right above the large equipment ribbon on the right-hand side, you will see Add Category. This can be used to further organize your equipment. For instance, if you do want to add your small equipment in your bids and you want to keep your small equipment and large equipment separate, click on Add Category and then type in small equipment. Click the Save button, and now you can separate your large equipment from your small equipment. Now, just like before, anything you add to that new category will have to be added to each proposal to recover the cost. Once you've added all of your equipment, click the Next button and we'll start filling in your labor.